Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet the Santita Jackson Morning Stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Oh, what a wonderful conversation everybody has, and I want you to become part of that family. So, like and subscribe. Please click those buttons and then click that bell so that whenever we come up, you will be notified. We'll be up live. You know, we're here every day from 6 to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. But go on and share the show with everybody. And please go meet me on X at Santita J, at Santita J, and my only Facebook page where we will be streaming this as well, everybody. It's Santita Jackson and Friends. Santita Jackson and Friends. These other pages, please don't pay any attention to them because I can't accept anyone there. It's a joy to be with you today. It's election season. We thought election 2024 was going to be a wash. It was predetermined, really, who the nominees of the two major American parties would be. But boy, we're in May and things are not quite the way we thought they might be. You've got Cornel West running, Jill Stein running, you've got Robert Kennedy running, and they are making impact, everybody. You've got an electorate that is increasingly independent, 27% Republican, 27% Democrats. The Democrats are down 2 points, the Republicans are up 2 points, but 44% of us are independent. And the numbers appear to be growing. And many people are saying that maybe I'm going to sit out this election season. Please don't do that. But people have gone to the polls in this primary season, even though it seems that we've had two predetermined candidates in the two major American parties, Democratic and Republican. On the Democratic side, President Biden, and then former President Donald Trump on the Republican side. Well, one of the things that we haven't been talking about lately is the vote. Gerald Griggs, you've heard him on my show before. He has been talking about getting an executive order to protect our vote. It is so precious and it is under attack. And many of us don't even realize it. So many of us are functioning in the darkness. Well, this gentleman who we have with us today, I'm so excited to have him on camera with us. I've had so much admiration for him. I remember I've always been a bit of a political wonk, right? You know, not just because of the home that I grew up in. I find the whole process fascinating. But I have to tell you, the 2000 election and watching that play out was it was what a wonderful lesson it was, but it made my heart break. And we really would not have known about the inner workings of that without the work of this man. Indeed, his work has been so groundbreaking that he has not been able to initially find a place in American television and in American media. Because Greg Palast, one of the world's foremost investigative journalists, he tells the truth. And when you speak truth to power, you kind of have to move out of the United States and come back. But he's still a New York Times bestselling author, the best democracy money can buy. Get it today because it is as relevant today as it was when it came out years ago. Get the documentary. Of course, he and Leonardo DiCaprio will be working together on another documentary. And he told me something. Indeed, his last documentary, as he was talking to us, really helping us to understand how our vote was being suppressed and how many of us were getting our names pushed off of the list, he went on tour all around the country, letting us know that. And that's still happening, everybody. Well, little did we know that Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, was the first slaveholding family in Georgia. How ironic is that? And he always finds these wonderful nuggets of history that help history today to come alive. And so I'm so glad that he is with us today. He is my dear, dear friend, part of my heart. And he is, well, Greg Palast Jackson. There you go.
Well, that's an honor. Now that's an honor.
I don't know, but that's what it is. So, my father wanted me to tell you that. Because
You tell him.
You are part of the family, and we have been. You and Reverend Jackson have been working together for decades, and then I have been honored to have you bring me under your wing and bring me into your company. And I just thank God for you because I learn from you all the time. And indeed, you said there's a lot going on around the country. But you said several years ago. But we've got to look at Georgia, and oh my goodness.
Yes.
I think your name is Edgar Casey, or maybe the prophet Jeremiah. I have to go back to the Old Testament. Something, because you foresaw that. You said, no, we've got to stop the steal. We've
Yeah.
got to stop the steal. Talk to me.
Yeah. So, yeah, for those who don't know me, I'm an investigative reporter. You can tell by my hat. And I've worked mostly outside the United States, even though you can tell I'm an American. Actually, I went to the University of Chicago with your dad. And so I'm an old dude. But I had to leave the country. I had to go work for BBC Television, the biggest television network in the world, and the other big television networks around the world before I could come back to the US. And I became an investigative reporter for Rolling Stone magazine, Harper's, and some others, and wrote some best-selling books, including The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, Armed Madhouse. And one of the things I've been specializing in is something that was very sad. One of the very first, I became the very first American author to uncover exactly how the elections get stolen from us. I know we don't like to use the term steal elections because somehow Donald Trump has seized that term. He's stolen the word stolen. What's happened is when you talk about the 2000 election, let me bring people back that. That was 24 years ago. But what happened was I was in London. I'm watching thousands of, I'm literally watching our cameras tracking one black person after another going to the polls and being told that they can't vote. Why? Because they're listed as felons. And in Florida at the time, if you had a felony conviction, you couldn't vote. Well, I'm all the way in London. I go to get BBC television and send me to Florida. I find out that there were 94,000 people, almost all of them black men, told they couldn't vote because they had felony crime records. Not one, Santita, not one was guilty of a crime except the crime of voting while black. Guys like Willie Steen, he was a Gulf War veteran working at a hospital. He takes his son with him, who's 5 years old, to say, here, I want to show you how great American democracy is. And they'd say, oh, you can't vote. You have a felony conviction. And his 5-year-old son said to him, Daddy, what's a felony conviction? Why are you a felon? He wasn't a felon. He was just voting while black. And because of that, George W. Bush was named president of the United States by just 537 votes because nearly 58,000 black men were denied the right to vote, claiming that they were felons. Not a single one, not one, was guilty of a crime. That's when I really began to find out that in America, your race determines whether you have the right to vote. And then we're not talking about the 50s. Remember, we're way past 1965 and the march across that bridge in Selma. I hope that people get a chance. Go to gregpalast.com. You'll see my name at the bottom of the screen, GregPalast, and you can download for free my film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Has your dad in it, and we're going across the Selma Bridge. You know why? Because you got to do it every year. Every year is the year you have to restore your right to vote. And now there's something new happening. You mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio. Doing 2 films with Leonardo and his father, George DiCaprio. We're very concerned about voting rights.
Why?
Yeah. So first, there is the film. I did a film a couple of years ago called Vigilante, which is called Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman. And that was about Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia. Now, he didn't play as some type of heroic guy because he takes on Trump. He didn't take on Trump. Trump lost the state by 11,000 votes. He says, steal me 11,000 votes. Well, the calls are being recorded. The guy wasn't going to go to jail for Trump. But believe me, he was taking votes for Trump with both hands. This guy, Brian Kemp, you're right. He was the first, his family brought the first Africans in chains to Georgia. Did you not, believe it or not many people realize that Georgia was one of the few places in America where slavery was against the law. For most of our history, was until just before the American Revolution.
Mm.
You couldn't have enslaved Africans, but it was Brian Kemp's family brought the first Africans in chains. They got the law changed. They got a special charter from the King of England. And you know who objected to them bringing in slaves?
Mm.
Thomas Jefferson, who was a friend of theirs. Not many people know that there was a long clause in the original Declaration of Independence where Jefferson said, "I'm a slaveholder, but it is against God's law. It's got to end." Jefferson actually put that in the original Declaration of Independence until the Georgians said, "Take that out." Not many people know that history. But okay, they say, well, is it his fault? Is it the governor's fault that his family became super rich off the pain and misery and death from his plantations? The answer is they still have those plantations. And the answer is that right now.
Wait, hold on, Greg. Today.
You have the plantation. Now, of course, people aren't in chains.
Yeah.
They're economically in chains.
Well, wait a minute. Hold it.
Mm-hmm.
The exception to the amendment that freed Black people from slavery was that if you go to jail, you are enslaved. And when you go through these areas, you will be shocked to see
chain gang slavery.
Prisoners still working working for people privately and working for the state and local governments.
And what we have here, it's so we do have in Georgia. Here is the problem that I've run into in Georgia. The problem what I found in Georgia was that the governor created a system, a vigilante vote challenge system, which they began in Georgia. And what it is it says that I, Greg Palast, can challenge any other voter from having their ballot counted.
What does that mean?
Now, what does that mean? Now, we have these things called purges in America where the state says, oh, that person doesn't properly live there, or they didn't vote 3 times, or all kinds of reasons why they take your name off the voter rolls. We should never be doing that. But some states, and it's begun with Georgia, says that any individual, any vigilante, any single person can say, don't let Santita Jackson vote. Or if she has a ballot, don't count her ballot, or don't send her a ballot. And Georgia is the very first state that put in their law, it's called SB 202, that I as an individual can challenge an unlimited number of voters. We had the vice chairman of the Republican Party of Georgia personally challenged 4,000 voters, said that they don't really live in Georgia. Now, and almost all those voters, you know who they were? Mm-hmm. Black soldiers from Fort Benning, Georgia. One, Major General Gamaliel Turner. This guy's a fantastic guy. He is America's top expert on weapons of the future. When Ukraine was invaded, the president asked him to go to California to work on new weapons systems. They blocked him from getting this vigilante, this, I'm sorry to use the term, but I have to. This white cracker Republican challenged the major. This is an American soldier's right to get his ballot. Now, he challenged 4,000 soldiers. Now, Major Turner actually flew all the way back to Georgia, 2,700 miles, to go in and complain. He brought in a lawyer. He had to get a lawyer. He had to travel across the country to get his ballot. He got his ballot, but 4,000 others never got their ballot. That's what was happening in Georgia. And another woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? The kind of right-wing nutcase congresswoman.
Well, don't call her a nutcase, but she is a handful.
She's a handful. Okay. You might not, in fact, actually, I almost wish she were a nutcase. She's actually I think she knows exactly what she's doing.
Quite saying she knows exactly
what she's doing. So she had one of her henchwomen, a woman named Pam Reardon, a Republican Party operative. And I'm not picking on the Republicans, but they're the only ones doing it. There are no Democrats that are doing these challenges. Not one Democrat has challenged another person's right to vote. This one woman, Pam Reardon, challenged 32,000 black people's rights to vote in Georgia. 32,000 voters. There were so many names that she didn't even print them out. She put them on a thumb drive. Now, I exposed her in the film Vigilante. I confronted her. Unfortunately, she was armed to the teeth. She had automatic weapons all around me. My local camera crew, they got so scared that they ran out, freaked out, screaming. They all thought they were going to get shot. So one of my guys who's very used to combat work, he was able to he kept a steady hand. But I had to take a chance that I was going to get gunned down for exposing this woman for her attack on these voters. I was able to save every one of those 32,000 voters. And because of that, the public radio station in Atlanta says that because of our work, we were able to save the seat of the Reverend Warnock. Senator Warnock was able to get his seat was saved. But here's why I'm telling you about the story of Georgia. First of all, the Democratic
You see this in your film. I want people to know the documentaries. That's why I really, really want people to see it, because it's very engaging. I will just say we're talking with Greg Palast, brilliant investigative reporter. He has been breaking the stories about the thefts of our elections for more than 20 years. The only reason we knew about Florida is because of the work that he was doing. GregPalast.com. And he's working with Leonardo DiCaprio now and his father on bringing a couple more films to you.
That's right.
I do appreciate the fact that you bring a lot of conscientious artists, well-known artists then, who, because they really, and what I appreciate about Leonardo DiCaprio and so many people who you brought into your project.
Jamie Foxx was very helpful.
Yes.
And by the way, that film Vigilante, which I'm now updating, is narrated by the great Rosario Dawson.
Absolutely.
What a beautiful voice she has. And Rosario's been fantastic. We've got some great people out of Hollywood. And one of the things we try to do, very important to me, try to make the films entertaining.
This is not hilarious.
Yes, I don't try to do, it's not good for you PBS-y stuff. You're going to laugh, you're going to cry. I have cartoons. I try to make it so that it's a movie. I want you to see a movie and enjoy a movie and learn while you're going. So what we're doing is we're taking the film Vigilante that we did 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the right-wing groups that came up with this challenge business in Georgia, unfortunately, they've taken them now to a dozen other states. So we're making a new film that's going to be called Vigilantes, Inc. Now, why is it called Vigilantes, Inc.? Mm-hmm. Because that is the name, believe it or not, when the Ku Klux Klan in 1942, it was their idea to come up with this whole system of challenging black voters. In 1942, they began this system. To get away with this challenge system, the Ku Klux Klan incorporated itself, and it called itself Vigilantes, Inc.
So wait. I want to be clear, and I want everyone in the audience to be clear about voter suppression and about these voter purges and how organized the effort has been.
Very organized.
To keep Black Americans from the polls, but it starts with Black Americans and it continues to spread, right?
Yes,
but let's
exactly.
No. I want you to explain.
Well, it's important. The reason that most of my work focuses on what happens to Black Americans is it goes back to economic power. Because Black people have less economic power. They have less political power to protect themselves. And back in 1942, when the Ku Klux Klan incorporated itself and called itself Vigilantes, Inc., they literally, in some counties, like Coffee County, Georgia, they literally challenged every single living Black voter was blocked and challenged. They're doing it again in Coffee County. I'm not making this up. They're taking the Ku Klux Klan of 42. They're now back as Vigilantes, Inc., and they're trying the same thing of mass challenges, tens of thousands of Black voters. But here's the problem. It's not just Coffee County, Georgia. I was just there. Douglas is the seat there. Not just Coffee County, Georgia, but they're taking it to Arizona, to Texas, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and you see the pattern here. Arizona, what they're trying to do is they're going after those swing states and vulnerable voters. In the case of Arizona, they're going after Hispanic voters. Case of Nevada, they're going after the American Native voters. In Wisconsin and Michigan, they're going after student and Black voters. So you have this new system in which individuals who are not government agents, they're just party hacks who are individually sending in names of voters saying, don't let these people vote. They're saying they don't live here. They're using these phony lists of people that they say they don't really live in Michigan. For example, I just talked to a student in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, Madison is a giant college town.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Joe Biden only won Wisconsin by 10,000 votes. They're trying to knock out 25,000 students. How are they doing that? They're saying, oh, well, they don't live at their voting address. Well, if you're a student and you move your dorm room, you don't have to re-register. If you're still in Madison, you don't have to re-register just because you've moved your dorm room or you moved down the street. So they're challenging all of these students because they moved their, from one dorm room or an apartment to another apartment. They shouldn't lose their vote. Then the second group they're going after.
So they don't have to re-register.
You do not have to re-register within your own county. By the way, I tell everyone, if you do move, re-register anyway, just so you don't have to go through don't have to go through the hell of this business. Mm-hmm. And in Milwaukee, we are finding Black people who are often renters who move down the street. They shouldn't have to re-register. Do it anyway because they're going to go after you. So they're going after Black people in Milwaukee, students in Madison. And we're seeing this in Michigan. And the stunts that they're pulling. So you'll see this on our new film, which will be coming out before the election, called Vigilantes, Inc., America's Vote Suppression Hitmen. And then we're doing a second film because I hope that most of you, if you haven't seen it yet, please do. Leonardo DiCaprio is starring in a film, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
And Killers of the Flower Moon is about how the Osage Nation, the Osage Indians of Oklahoma, they're forced from Missouri to Kansas to Oklahoma. 95% of them died of smallpox and starvation. It was horrible. So many of them died that there was no one to bury them. Their bones are all over the prairie. I have photos of it. It's really horrible. It turns out, though, where they ended up sticking them was on top of one of the biggest oil strikes in America. So the Osage Indians, and they tend to prefer to be called Indians or Osage Nation, they ended up with a massive amount of oil.
Yeah.
The result was that all these white guys came in and married some of the Indians or took out insurance policies. They murdered at least 100 of the Osage Indians were murdered for their oil. But then what happened after that, after almost all the oil was stolen, many years later, about 30 years ago, Greg Palast, that's me when I was still an investigator, before I was a journalist, there was some oil still left on the reservation, and it was getting stolen. So I was asked to work with the FBI to find out who's stealing their oil. Turns out that there were these two brothers out of Wichita, David and Charles Koch, the Koch brothers of Wichita. They were going in with trucks in the middle of the night and literally stealing the oil off the reservation with their trucks. They're stealing the oil in the middle of the night. Not a small. Yeah, the Koch brothers were stealing the oil.
Well, the Koch brothers, the wealthy Koch brothers, of great social standing,
right?
Fund these right-wing causes, who fund the campaigns, and really, they have funded policies to take the vote away.
And they are one of the problems because they're funding a lot of these tricks to take away your right to vote. But they were very small-time operators, so they got this contract from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and they were just stealing the oil. We figured that they stole about $6 billion worth of oil, not a small amount. That's where they first made their money. So I'm making a film now about the theft of the oil from the Osage by the Koch brothers. Now, one thing I do have working with me, the top FBI agent that was put in charge of the investigation. The guy who, there were 50 FBI agents I worked with. The top agent has been working with me on the film, and also the top special prosecutor was working on the film, and 2 United States senators, including John McCain, who's now passed away. And they're working with me on this story of the theft of the oil from the natives, from the Osage. And
What?
that film,
John McCain?
yeah, John McCain was, he's dead now, but he actually was very, very upset that oil was being stolen from the natives. He said, this is the worst case. He actually said, this is the worst case of thievery he's ever encountered in his entire career, was just stealing oil from the poorest people in the country. These are poor people. Mm-hmm. And so what's happened is, so I brought back in now to do this film, which is, so if you see the film, Killers of the Flower Moon, that film ends in 1924. Mm-hmm. I'm making the documentary for Leonardo and his dad, George, which is the documentary, which is the 100 years since. And that's the theft by the Koch brothers of their oil. And also the fight of those natives of the Osage to take control of their lives and property. As they say, we're occupied territory. Why are we under the occupation of the United States? We want it. We're Americans. You know, as you and most people may know this, almost every American native goes into the U.S. military. They are Americans. They're proud Americans. But they don't want to be occupied Americans. They want their freedom. And so part of our film is to discuss why they should have their freedom. Do you know that the Osage Indians, most of them, are listed by the U.S. government as mentally incompetent?
Why?
Because that is under the law. They are, if they're an Osage Indian, they are mentally incompetent. Now, are you ready for this?
I'm not ready for that.
We have I just met with an Oxford professor who's an Osage Indian, a Stanford professor who's an Osage Indian. They're listed as incompetent. The top trial lawyer of Oklahoma, is the chief of the Osage, Chief Standing Bearer. He's incompetent. This is nuts. This is crazy. Oxford, Stanford, trial lawyers, doctors, and yet they're treated where they're children who can't have control of their own money. They can't have control of their own oil. They can't have control of their own property. So we're trying to tell that story. And the story we're telling, the film is going to be called Long Knife. And it's the Osage Nation, the Koch oil, and the new Killers of the Flower Moon. So if you go to gregpalace.com, you can take a look at the films we're doing about the voting, the films we're doing about what's happening to the American natives, particularly the Osage. You get the full story. They kind of go together. Because you know something? When you take away people's power, you have to take away their vote.
Well, let me ask you this. No. Because, I mean, you, of course, you remember and you worked with the brilliant Reverend Frank Watkins.
Oh, yeah.
Who was Reverend Jesse Jackson's longest serving staff member. And he ended up going with Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. when he went to Congress, and they did some great work. And many people don't know he's one of the great unsung heroes of the civil rights movement.
Amazing work.
Amazing work. And at the center of his work, and he was such a fan of your work and such an admirer of yours, was the vote. And I said, why is it you are obsessed about the vote? I mean, because I'd known, he was Uncle Frank. I'd known him all my life. I said, what is your obsession about the vote? I mean, because Reverend has an obsession about the vote. You have an obsession with the vote. And he said, because that is the right upon which all others are predicated. Do you agree? Do you agree with that?
That's one thing that I hear. In fact, actually, one of the chief of the Osage said this to me. He said, everything depends on our vote. We don't have the rights to our water. We don't have the rights to our oil. We don't have the rights to an education. We don't have the rights to health care that we need. We will not get those rights until we secure our rights to the vote. And that's why they try so hard to make sure that we don't get the right to vote. Here's an interesting one. Like, for example, so the tribe was telling me, one of the tribal leaders, that in Arizona, the Republican legislature, remember, just so you are, if you're not aware, overwhelmingly, I would say 90% plus of all American natives vote Democratic.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when they suppress the black vote, they know they're taking away Democratic votes. When they suppress the native vote, they definitely take away Democratic votes. So in Arizona, and one of the reservations, they eliminated every single polling station. I don't mean that they reduced the number of polling stations. I mean, they eliminated the polling stations, which meant that if you're a native, you had to drive like 150 miles round trip in some cases to vote, to physically vote.
How is that possible?
Because the Republican legislature said, well, we're going to reduce the number of polling stations. There's not a lot of Indians out here. It's a big, wide space. So we really can't just, it's not worth it for us to set up a polling station. So what happened is that now that the American native population is learning how you can mail in your ballots, it's very important for people to really learn how to protect their mail-in vote. Get that ballot early. Make sure it's filled out properly. It's so easy for someone to cancel your vote because you didn't sign it properly or you didn't put it in the right return address. If you're going to mail in your ballot, make sure that someone is checking it over and working with you on getting it in right or doing it correctly. But they work really hard to keep American natives from voting. One of the problems you run into on reservations, for example, is that under the Patriot Act, you can't get a mail-in ballot. You can't get a ballot unless you have a postal address. Now, if you're in Chicago, I used to live at 5917 57th Street. But in a reservation, your address may be 2 doors down from the gas station. Well, you can't vote that way anymore. So on the reservations, you often have people who simply don't have legal voting addresses. So what we have to do is we have to work very hard to make sure we have the vote. Don't wait till the last minute to find out if you're properly registered, if you have a proper address. Please, 60 days before an election, check your vote. But I'm telling you, they're going after that native vote. They're going after the Hispanic vote. They're going after the African-American vote. And some states are now starting this business where you have to prove you're a citizen. Well, say, oh, well, sure, you should be a citizen to vote, but we don't have a bunch of non-citizens voting. We haven't found one. In Arizona, they passed a law saying you have to be a citizen to vote. We had one guy named, one Republican who said that there are 5 million illegal alien voters. I said, give me the name of 5. Not 5 million, just give me 5. He couldn't name one. Not one. Not what people don't listen. People who are, we do have people who sneak across the border to get work. The last thing they're going to do is sneak across the border and register themselves with an address. It's not something people do. So it's completely, what does happen is that if you got a driver's license, a lot of women get married and adopt their husband's names.
They have to change everything.
Now they got a problem.
Oh my gosh. Well,
that's what I'm saying. So go to gregpals.com. You'll see the stories I'm writing. Watch the film. Right now you can download for free The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. And then pretty soon before the election, we'll have out Vigilantes Inc. And then we'll also have out Long Knife, the story that will follow up on the Leonardo DiCaprio film.
Well, also we've just been talking today. We are working to figure out how we can come together coming into the Democratic Convention, because the Rainbow Push International Conference will be the 13th through the 17th. We are purposely dovetailing into the Democratic Convention because, Greg, I don't know if you're aware of this, and everyone, he is with us from Portugal right now. And I'm so glad that
Portugal, yes.
that he is with us today. now it is increasingly difficult to demonstrate
Yeah.
at the convention. There's a 4 mile dead zone, if you will, between the convention center and the people. If you don't have the proper credentials, you will not be able to get there. You certainly can't demonstrate there.
Yeah, they call it security, but what it means is they're silencing protest.
So what do you think that is about? And do you think that this, when we look at what's happened to the student encampments and how they've been attacked, um, and we see what's happening with Julian Assange,
Yeah.
it just seems like there is a stifling of dissent when you see people who are being pushed away from the vote. It's Do you see a line here? I mean, is there?
Absolutely. You can't, if you're going to suppress the vote, you have to suppress the information about the suppression of the vote. It all goes together. In fact, I'm going to throw out a public, my dear friends out there in Chicago, I know that a lot of this will be in Minnesota, but I'm going to ask my good friend Danny Wirtz, who owns the Chicago Blackhawks, the stadium and the team. Danny, you've got a big responsibility in Chicago this year. I'm going to expect you to show my film, Vigilantes Inc., and our film Long Knife, because the Blackhawks need to respect the native ground on which that stadium is built, and respect the voters of Chicago who fought so hard. And he's a very progressive guy, so I'm calling him out so everyone call Danny Wirtz and say, Danny, you're a great guy. We want the Blackhawks to not only be the champions, I want you to win the championship, but I want you to win the moral championship too. Let's show these films to the people coming to Chicago. Let them see what's going on with the natives of America. Let them see what's going on with the voters of America. And I think that would be a great place, that the Blackhawks Stadium would be a fantastic place for us to have a meeting where we educate people, that we bring in the leadership. I think your dad would be a fantastic person to be speaking at Blackhawks Stadium. So let's try to aim towards having the Blackhawks Stadium be a center. If they're not going to let us go into the streets, they're going to say, because they're going to say, what they're going to do? They're going to invoke Chicago 1968. And they're going to say, oh, riots and the city will be in flames and da-da-da. But you know what? Let's go to the Blackhawks Stadium and together, peacefully, non-violently, but militantly, make the point of what's happening in America. And let's talk about it. Let's tell the story. I would love to hear your dad's voice there, your voice, and my hat.
Well, your voice. But, I think that we should, because this is the most American of issues. And many people are expecting Chicago. Well, Chicago is going to be on point. And I think that Milwaukee ought to be too, because the Republican National Convention will be there. And all roads lead to Chicago. All roads should lead to Milwaukee, but they are coming here in August. But I think it's an opportunity, Greg Palast, for us to show your movies, to show your film, to have people purchase your books, for you to talk about the vote, the importance of it, and the fact that it's under attack. Because as you know, your dear friend and lawyer, Attorney Gerald Griggs, who's the president of the NAACP of Georgia,
yes,
he's been pushing and pressing President Biden to sign an executive order protecting the voting rights, and to no avail. He
and
said,
wouldn't it be terrific to have my lawyer and also one of a truly great civil rights leader, Gerald Griggs,
yes,
host President Biden signing an executive order at Blackhawks Stadium during the Chicago convention? That would be a tremendous thing to say. We're doing more than just nominating me to run for president.
Mm-hmm.
I am now going to say, more than me running for president is I'm going to protect your vote.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that we can work towards. I think we got to put some pressure down here to say, I know you're coming here to ask for our vote. I'll tell you what, why don't you protect my vote? So I can't vote for you if you don't protect my vote. If you let the vigilantes knock off, the black soldiers out of Fort Benning, how disgusting is that? I mean, just think about that a minute. Taking black soldiers and saying, because you're assigned to a military base in California, you lose your vote?
My grandfather had to come from the Second World War, when they arrived in New York and they took the train down south, when they got to Washington D.C., the nation's capital, my grandfather had to move to the colored train, and the Nazi POWs were moved to the main train. So that was the last time I saw my grandfather in person before he died. He told me that story, and he started telling us stories. He's about the Second World War, about black men being sent into Auschwitz and Buchenwald. And he said you had to send us there because the survivors would have thought that the white soldiers were Nazis and that they were being tricked. He said, but they also sent us there because the camps were laden with landmines, and if anyone was going to get killed, it was going to be us.
Yeah.
And we're still seeing this play out today. I guess that's my point. And what I think we do have to work with Mr. Wirtz, and we have to work with him on changing the name of that team, because that is something that Indigenous people want. And that's a very real thing, because I have heard wonderful things about Mr. Wirtz. And I think that if you talk to people, you absolutely have a chance of having them understand your point of view, and certainly their point of view. That having been said, I think there's a lot of work to do, and this is a wonderful opportunity, because I think you have a lot. I think that you can a lot of attention. I think that when we talk to our young people who are so stirred up now, and quite frankly, the American electorate, Greg, is stirred up. Many people, and I want you to speak to them, I've got about 10 minutes left here, are saying, I'm so underwhelmed. I'm so angry about Gaza. I'm so angry about the migrant crisis. I'm angry about inflation. I mean, I think that people underestimate, and this is something that former President Trump has tapped into. Did he do it the right way? No, but he's tapped into it, the anger and the disappointment that is out here. It makes it even more important for us to vote. And so I want to find out from you, okay, how do we use this moment?
You know what? I think that people expect voting to be a miracle.
Okay.
And maybe we're asking too much. Like I say, if we don't have the vote, look, we have Medicare because we voted in Lyndon Johnson. We have the Voting Rights Act because we made that vote. It's important. We changed our Constitution because we elected officials to create the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments, which abolished slavery and gave us equal rights amendments. We're still having to fight, but what we don't have miracles. We're still missing the health care that we need, the education we need. No, I'm sorry. One thing, you know what a vote isn't? It's not a magic wand. It's something that helps you. I brush my teeth every day, not because I think brushing my teeth is gonna be a miracle. I see the TV ads. I'm gonna brush my teeth and I'm gonna meet some hot. I'm gonna have a love affair in the next. No. But if I don't brush my teeth, I think my teeth will fall out. Let's get away from the idea that voting is a miracle. I'll tell you this. I'll tell you what happens when we don't vote. When you don't vote, someone else is going to vote for you. When Major Gamaliel Turner was denied his right to vote, it was only 11,000 votes that gave Biden Georgia, 10,000 votes in Arizona, 10,000 votes in Wisconsin. Joe Biden became president by only 44,000 votes. Now you might say, well, what's Joe Biden done for me? Well, let me ask you a question. What would Donald Trump have done for you if he got in? 44,000 votes out of 180 million cast. Every single vote counts. Make sure you get your ballot, that you're properly registered, and that you cast that ballot. Is it a miracle? No, it's not a miracle. But if you don't do it, I can tell you that the pain you will suffer by letting someone else vote for you. Do you really want that guy? If you see my film Vigilante, and when you see the new version, Vigilantes Inc., There's this old white guy, and I'm not picking on his race, but he's this old Republican. He actually wears a set of 6 guns. He actually acts as a vigilante. They're loaded guns, by the way. When I interviewed him, these are loaded guns.
And it looked crazy. I want you to know.
He's crazy.
No,
and
no.
These guys are loaded. They have loaded guns. They're intimidating people. And that's the guy who's challenging 4,000 black soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he should be allowed to get away with it? The answer is no, I don't think so. So what you do, so when he's challenging a black soldier, you have to say, then I better make sure that my vote counts. Because of the people that they are blocking. We can't unblock every action that they take. We can't stop them on everything that they do. I try. I make film after film after film. We have to vote. And I know people want to do I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I do want you to vote. And I know a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to do a protest vote, whether it's, good old Professor West or Bobby Kennedy, who I've known for years, et cetera. I want you to really think, if you're in a swing state, really think about who you're voting for and the difference it would make in your life. We have made progress. Your dad and I was talking about how we both spoke at the United Auto Workers 50 years ago. A lot of things have gone backwards, but a whole lot has gone forward.
Mm-hmm.
A whole lot has gone forward. We have medical drug programs. We do have wider public education. We do have affirmative action. Are there things that still have to be done? Oh, yeah. There's no miracle in voting, but this is our moment. But we got to also learn their tricks so we can undo their tricks. We have to know their tricks. Look, right now, there's some serious poisons in our water. This is one thing you're going to find out when you see our film Long Knife about the native reservations. We got methane going into the atmosphere, which is burning this planet down. We can do something about it. The vote won't be perfect. But if you don't vote, the Koch brothers, I just told you, they stole that $6 billion worth of oil. They're using that money to buy politicians. They're buying and selling politicians like bags of sugar. They have the money. We've got the votes. We're the only thing that is stopping this nation from becoming nothing but a kleptocratic dictatorship of the uber rich. We have to be very careful. We have not gone down the road to dictatorship yet. But believe me, if we don't take advantage of our vote, it is precious. It is precious. And I just, I know, like your dad has said, like the Reverend has said, we've marched too long. We've died too young to give up the vote now.
And it is under threat. I mean, and that's why I'm trying to figure out. I've just got 3 minutes left here. I mean, because I don't know why President Biden has resisted the executive order. It would only last through the duration of his presidency, but more than anything, he needs that in the fall. And everyone who's heard my show, I've been a critic, but I've been a critic because I care. Because I know what's at stake here.
Joe Biden has always confused me when it comes to voting issues. He's never been strong. He comes out of Delaware. He's never been strong on these issues. So the answer is we've got to be strong. We got to demand it.
So we have to push him. Period.
We have to push him. You know what? These guys don't do nothing for nothing. We have to say this is important. I once heard him say, I was furious. He said, when he first came in, should we make voting rights? HR 1 was the bill at the time. Should we make that a priority? And he said, well, if we do that, then I can't get my economic agenda through. But you know what? You won't have an economic agenda if you don't have your voters. We have to make it an issue. And I'd say, let's have him sign it in Black Hawk Stadium. Boom.
I'm with you.
Let's make it an issue. Instead of just a general thing, let's say This is the day you're going to come to Blackhawk Stadium and you're going to sign this bill right there with the Reverend. You're going to hand him the pen. How about that?
I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Because we'll all win and he will win. But he's got to do some things because he's taken a massive hit on his Mideast policy. Massive hit. People have, I know the Black community have felt some kind of way about voting rights, about the Justice and Policing Act, about inflation. Look, your alma mater, my father's alma mater, my brother Jesse's alma mater, the University of Chicago is $100,000 a year for an undergrad. Who can do that? The last minute belongs to you. First of all, gregpalast.com. Go there. See the documentaries and follow him. He's going to be in Chicago in August, and we've got a lot of talking to do, a lot of work to do, because I think somewhere between the 12th and the end of the convention the following week, I think we can really turn our pain into power, as Reverend says. Wow, I can't believe it. I'm sounding like him. Well, not like him, but certainly I'm quoting him. But the last belongs to you.
Go to gregpalast.com. So that's GREGPALAST. I'm also on, if you go on to X at Greg_Palast, everyone gets on X. But go to gregpalast.com and download The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, a film you can see for free. Stay aware and get ready to watch the DiCaprio film, Long Knife, and also our next film, which will be featuring Jamie Foxx and, of course, the great Rosario Dawson and a lot of other terrific people. And that will be Vigilantes, Inc. But go to gregpalast.com, and I will see you at Blackhawk Stadium in August. We're going to make sure that is where we're going to have, because what I like about it is that they're going to try to stop protests in the street.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say it's too dangerous. Well, let's go inside Blackhawk Stadium and say that's where we're going to be. We're going to be inside the stadium. And we're going to fill the stadium. We're going to fill it. We're going to make it rock. That's my commitment. We're going to make sure that happens.
Absolutely. And come on over to Rainbow Push, because we've got our international.
Oh, I will be.
Oh, come on. You're going to be part of that. Because we've got to show your documentaries there. People have to see that. People have to get your books. People have to see you. We have to talk about the vote. It is the right that gives us the right to have all others.
Fantastic.
That's it. Greg Palast, I love you so much. And I'm so glad that we were together today.
Today, you've been.
Well, tonight.
Tonight. It's night here in Portugal.
That's right.
And hopefully it'll be morning in America, the real morning, not the Reagan morning, but
not with the you. Right, that's right. But I'm gonna hop on to the second hour of the show. But I'm gonna bring this up in the next hour and talk about the vote. But we're gonna have you back. When are you getting back to the States?
Yep, I'm gonna come back and we're gonna make sure that we take control of Blackhawk Stadium. It's gonna be our Hawks now.
All right, now love it.
Love
you, Greg Palast.
Okay, thanks. Bye.